My name is Eli Rivers, and I am 42 years old. For most of my life, I have been haunted by one sentence. Five ordinary words that have quietly stolen decades from me. I'll do it tomorrow. Maybe you've whispered them too. Maybe you said them this morning when your alarm rang, stabbing through the darkness like a blade you chose to ignore. Maybe you said them last night when your heart told you to forgive someone, when the weight of unspoken words pressed against your chest like a stone. Maybe you've said them every time the dream inside you tried to wake up, clawing at the walls of your comfortable cage. I'm angry. I'm angry at myself, angry at the lies I told, angry at the years I threw away like they were nothing. But mostly, I'm angry that it took me 42 years to realize that tomorrow is the cruelest word in any language. So before we walk through this story together, before I bleed these truths onto your screen, pause right here and do one small, brave thing. Tap like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Because what you're about to hear isn't just my confession. It's a mirror. And mirrors don't lie, even when we wish they would. By the end of this hour, I promise you will never look at tomorrow the same way again. You'll see it for what it really is. Not a gift, but a thief. Not a promise, but a lie we tell ourselves when we're too afraid to live. Tomorrow was always my comfort blanket. It wrapped around me in soft whispers, promising that everything would be easier in some mythical future where I was braver, smarter, more ready. Tomorrow made me feel safe while quietly, systematically, stealing my life one day at a time. When I was a kid, I postponed everything. Homework sat on my desk like a judgment I refused to face. Birthday parties became anxiety-inducing events I'd promised to enjoy next year when I felt more social. Even joy, pure simple joy, became something I scheduled for later, as if happiness was a meeting I could reschedule indefinitely. I thought waiting made me wise. I convinced myself that patience was a virtue, that good things came to those who waited. What a beautiful lie. What a perfect excuse for cowardice. Waiting didn't make me wise. It made me older. It made me grayer. It made me a stranger to my own dreams. I remember one evening when I was 12, sitting on our roof watching the sun bleed orange across the sky. The colors were so vivid they hurt to look at, like God had spilled paint across heaven. I ran downstairs, grabbed my art supplies, and then stopped. I'll paint it tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow when the light is better. Tomorrow when I have more time. Tomorrow when I'm not so tired. I never did paint that sunset. That sky disappeared into memory, and so did the version of me who believed I had endless skies left. So did the boy who thought beauty would wait for him to be ready. We tell ourselves time is generous, don't we? We act like it's this bottomless well we can draw from whenever we please. But time isn't generous. It's precise. It gives exactly what it takes. Every second you spend in tomorrow is a second stolen from today, and you can never get it back. Never. Tomorrow is the softest thief you'll ever meet. It doesn't break down your door or demand your wallet. It simply whispers sweet promises while picking your pockets clean. It convinces you that delay is wisdom, that waiting is planning, that someday is a real place you can visit when you buy the right ticket. But someday is a country that doesn't exist. Tomorrow is the appointment that never comes. And I spent the first 40 years of my life waiting for a train that was never scheduled to arrive. The weight of all those tomorrows, God, the weight of them. They pile up like stones in your chest until breathing becomes a conscious effort. Every postponed conversation, every delayed dream, every "I'll do it later" becomes a brick in the wall between you and your actual life. And the cruelest part? Tomorrow feels so reasonable. It feels so mature. I'm being responsible, you tell yourself. I'm being practical. But responsibility without action is just fear in a business suit. Practicality without courage is just cowardice with good marketing. Procrastination never announces itself with fanfare. It doesn't kick down your door wearing a black mask and demanding your dreams. No, it's far more insidious than that. It tiptoes in wearing the mask of good intentions, speaking in the language of reason, carrying credentials from the University of just being careful. I called mine preparation. What a beautiful word, preparation. It sounds so professional, so thoughtful. I'm not procrastinating, I'd tell anyone who asked, including myself. I'm preparing. I'm waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right alignment of stars. What I was really waiting for was permission. Permission from fear, permission from other people, permission from life itself to finally start living. But here's what I learned too late. Life doesn't give permission. Life gives opportunities, and opportunities have expiration dates. The small delays started innocently enough. I'll travel after college, I promised myself, when I have more money saved up. College ended and suddenly it was, I'll travel after I get established in my career. Then it was, after I pay off my student loans. Then, after I meet someone to travel with. Each excuse was perfectly reasonable, each delay completely logical. But reasonable excuses make unreasonable lives. I said I'd write the book when inspiration struck, as if inspiration was some mystical force that only visited the worthy. I waited for lightning when I should have been learning to make fire. I said I'd start the business when I had enough capital, enough experience, enough confidence. I was waiting to feel ready, not realizing that readiness is something you build through action, not something you wait to receive through prayer. And then there was my father. God, my father. I said I'd call him when work slowed down. I said I'd visit when things weren't so hectic. I said I'd tell him I loved him when it didn't feel so awkward, when we could find the right words, when the silence between us felt less heavy. He died on a Tuesday morning while I was in a meeting about quarterly projections. He died while I was discussing numbers that don't matter with people whose names I can barely remember. He died while I was preparing to live. The nurse called me 3 times before I answered. 3 times. Because I was too busy being important to pick up the phone. When I finally answered, her voice was gentle but firm. Mr. Rivers, you need to come to the hospital. Your father passed this morning. Each later I had chosen. Each when I have time I had whispered. Each will talk soon I had promised. They all built walls around me. Brick by brick, excuse by excuse, delay by delay. Until one morning I realized I was living in a prison I had designed myself out of perfectly reasonable, completely logical, utterly devastating excuses. If you're hearing this and your heart is tightening, if your chest feels heavy and your breathing feels shallow, good. That's not anxiety you're feeling. That's recognition. That's the sound of your walls cracking, the feeling of truth breaking through the comfortable lies you've been telling yourself. That tightness in your chest, that's your soul trying to wake up. That's your real life trying to break free from the fantasy prison you've built called tomorrow. In my 20s, I became what the world calls productive. I had calendars and apps and systems. I color-coded my life and scheduled my breathing. I was efficient, organized, optimized for maximum output. I was everything except present. I filled my calendar so completely that there was no room for spontaneity, no space for life to surprise me. I polished spreadsheets instead of my soul. I perfected presentations while my dreams gathered dust. I thought busyness was purpose, but it was only distraction wearing a 3-piece suit. You can waste an entire life being incredibly efficient at things that don't matter. You can climb every ladder and still end up against the wrong wall. You can win every game and still lose your life. I kept saying I'd start when I had more time, as if time was something that multiplied when you ignored it. I waited for the perfect moment, the ideal circumstances, the alignment of professional stars and personal planets. I was waiting for a green light from the universe when I should have been learning to make my own. When I get the promotion, then I'll have time for my art. When I pay off the mortgage, then I'll take that writing class. When the kids are older, then I'll pursue my music. When I retire, then I'll really start living. But time never multiplies, it only evaporates, and it evaporates faster for the hesitant. Time doesn't wait for you to get ready. It doesn't pause for your convenience or postpone itself for your comfort. Time moves at exactly one speed, relentless. The promotion came, and with it more responsibility, longer hours, bigger problems. The mortgage got paid, and suddenly there was another mortgage, a bigger house, more things to maintain. The kids got older, and life got more complicated, not simpler. Retirement became a moving target, always 10 years away, like a horizon you can see but never reach. I thought I was being smart, strategic, responsible. I thought I was playing the long game, but the long game is just a fancy name for a slow suicide. It's death by delay, murder by maybe, assassination by after. The clock doesn't mock you when you procrastinate. It doesn't laugh or point fingers or judge your choices. It simply moves on without you, indifferent to your plans, unmoved by your excuses, unimpressed by your intentions. It ticks forward with the mechanical precision of truth itself. And here's what really burns. Later became my addiction. I was a junkie for postponement, an addict of delay. Later was my drug of choice because it felt so much better than never, so much more hopeful than no. Later was tomorrow's prettier sister, delay's more attractive cousin. But later is just never with better marketing. Later is the same empty promise wearing different clothes. Later is a lie that tells itself it's hope. I developed an entire philosophy around waiting. I called it patience, wisdom, strategic thinking. I read books about timing and seasons, about how everything has its perfect moment. I studied the habits of successful people and learned about the virtue of delayed gratification. What I didn't learn was the difference between strategic delay and pathological avoidance. What I didn't understand was that sometimes the perfect moment is right now, imperfect and messy and terrifying as it is. Every tomorrow costs someone else a today. Every time you choose delay, someone else pays the price in real time, in real moments, in real opportunities for connection that evaporate while you're busy preparing to be present. My mother waited for me to visit, not occasionally, constantly. She waited through Christmas mornings when I chose to sleep in. She waited through Sunday dinners when I chose to work late. She waited through birthday calls when I chose to make them brief. She waited with the patient fury of someone who loves you enough to let you disappoint them repeatedly. I always said I'd visit next weekend, next month, when things slowed down. But things never slow down. They just change shape. The urgencies of your 20s become the responsibilities of your 30s, become the complications of your 40s. Life doesn't get simpler. You just get better at lying to yourself about when you'll have time for what matters. There was always another weekend, until there wasn't. A friend once told me something that I laughed off at the time. We were sitting in a coffee shop and I was explaining why I couldn't make it to his birthday party. Too much work, too many deadlines, too many responsibilities. He looked at me with this expression I couldn't read and said, "Eli, one day you'll realize that silence is expensive." I laughed then. I actually laughed. I thought he was being dramatic, philosophical in that way that people are when they want to sound deeper than they are. I laughed and changed the subject and forgot about it for years. I don't laugh now. I don't laugh because I've seen the bill for my silence. I've calculated the cost of my delays. I've counted the price of my postponements. The calls I didn't return became debts I could never repay. Every voicemail I saved for later became evidence of my absence. Every text I read but didn't answer immediately became a small betrayal, a tiny abandonment, a micro rejection of someone who cared enough to reach out. The letters I meant to send piled up in my mind like promises to the dead. Thank you notes that never got written, apology letters that never got sent, love letters that stayed trapped in my throat like birds too afraid to fly. They all became ghosts that visit when the house is quiet, when the phone stops ringing, when the world finally gives you all the silence you thought you wanted. My college roommate called me every few months for about 5 years after graduation. I was always too busy to talk, always in the middle of something important, always promising to call him back. The calls got less frequent, then occasional, then they stopped. I told myself I'd reach out soon, that I'd make time for a real conversation, that I'd be a better friend when life settled down. He died in a car accident 7 years ago. I found out on Facebook. Facebook. I stared at the screen reading condolences from people who had managed to stay in touch, from friends who had made the time I couldn't find, from people who had chosen presence over postponement. I typed and deleted a dozen comments. What do you say? Sorry I was too busy to be your friend? I always meant to call you back? I thought we had more time. I said nothing. I closed the laptop and sat in my expensive apartment in my successful life and felt exactly like what I was, a stranger to the people who had once mattered to me. If you love someone, don't plan to tell them later. Love isn't a plan, it's a verb, and verbs expire when left unused. Love is a muscle that atrophies when not exercised. Love is a language that becomes foreign when not spoken. The people who wait for you aren't just waiting for your time. They're waiting for your attention, your presence, your acknowledgement that they matter enough to interrupt your precious schedule. They're waiting for proof that you remember they exist when they're not standing right in front of you. And when they stop waiting, when they stop calling, when they stop trying, that's not them giving up on you. That's them finally learning what you've been teaching them all along, that they're not a priority in your life, just an option you'll get to when it's convenient. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always my least favorite day, too far from the last weekend, too far from the next one. Just Tuesday, sitting there in the middle of the week like a gray room with no windows. I was in my office doing something important. I can't remember what now, which should tell you everything about how important it actually was. Important things you remember. The rest is just noise that feels important while you're drowning in it. The call came from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers were usually solicitors or wrong numbers or people trying to sell me something I didn't need. But something made me pick up, maybe intuition, maybe just the rarity of my phone actually ringing in an age of texts and emails. Is this Eli Rivers? Yes. This is St. Mary's Hospital. You're listed as the emergency contact for Margaret Rivers. My mother. Of course. I had forgotten I was still her emergency contact. Forgotten that someone might need to reach me about something that couldn't wait for my convenience. There's been an incident. You need to come in as soon as possible. Hospitals always sound the same. Echoes bouncing off sterile walls, voices floating in disinfected air, the quiet efficiency of people who deal with endings every day. They speak in careful phrases designed to prepare you without destroying you, to inform you without overwhelming you. But there's no gentle way to learn that time has run out. I drove to the hospital in a haze, my mind cycling through scenarios, bargaining with reality, negotiating with facts that had already been decided. She's probably fine. It's probably nothing serious. We'll laugh about this later. Later. Even then, even racing toward the hospital, I was still thinking in terms of later. The doctor was kind but direct. Heart attack. Massive. Quick. She didn't suffer. These are the words people say when someone's story ends. When all the laters become nevers. When tomorrow reveals itself as the lie it always was. That was the day I learned what finality feels like. Not anger, that came later. Not sadness, that was still processing. Just stillness. Just the complete absence of forward motion. The sudden stop of a life that had been running toward tomorrow for 40 years. Because when you lose the person you promised to call tomorrow, when you lose the person you were going to visit next month, when you lose the person you were going to spend more time with, when things slowed down, time itself becomes the enemy. I sat in my car outside that hospital for 2 hours, unable to move, unable to think, unable to process the mathematics of loss. All those postponed conversations, all those delayed visits, all those moments I had saved for later, they were gone. Not rescheduled, not delayed, not postponed again. Gone. I whispered to the steering wheel, to the parking lot, to the empty space where my mother's voice should have been. I'm sorry. I was just waiting for the right day. But the sky didn't answer. It was already moving on to Wednesday, indifferent to my regret, unmoved by my apologies, uninterested in my explanations. The world doesn't stop spinning when you realize you've been living wrong. It just keeps moving, carrying you forward whether you're ready or not. The funeral was the following Saturday. People spoke about her kindness, her patience, her generosity. They talked about how she always made time for others, how she was always available, always present. They painted a picture of someone who lived in the moment while her son lived in the future tense. I didn't speak. What would I say? That I was too busy to love her properly? that I was saving my affection for a more convenient time, that I thought we had forever when all we had was today. That night, I went home to an apartment full of achievements and empty of life. Awards on the walls, success in the bank account, and a phone that had stopped ringing because I had trained everyone that I was too important to be reached. Tomorrow died with my mother that Tuesday. Not the concept of tomorrow that still exists, still ticks forward on clocks and calendars, but my relationship with tomorrow, my faith in tomorrow, my belief that tomorrow was a promise rather than a probability, that died in a hospital room while I was driving there as fast as I could, finally urgent about something that could no longer wait. Grief is an honest teacher. It strips away everything unimportant with the efficiency of fire, leaving only what matters, the truth about how you've been living and the choice about how you want to live next. For weeks after the funeral, I couldn't function. Not in any dramatic way. I still went to work, still paid bills, still moved through the motions of a life. But I felt like someone had removed my operating system and forgotten to install a new one. I was running on backup power, basic functions only. Everything felt hollow. Success felt hollow. Money felt hollow. The promotion I had been chasing felt like a joke someone else was telling. I would sit in meetings listening to people discuss quarterly projections and market strategies and wonder if they knew they were going to die, if they understood that all of this would end, if they had ever calculated the cost of their delays. The apartment I had worked so hard to afford felt like a museum of someone else's life. Designer furniture that no one sat on, art that no one looked at, a kitchen where no one cooked because I was always too busy to eat at home. A life optimized for productivity and completely unequipped for living. But grief, for all its darkness, is also a doorway. It's a forced awakening, a violent education in what actually matters. When everything else falls away, when all the noise stops. When the urgencies that felt so important reveal themselves as illusions, that's when you can finally hear your real life calling your name. So I started small. Not because I was wise, but because I was broken. And broken people can only take tiny steps. One phone call I'd been avoiding. My sister, who had been trying to reach me for months to plan a family reunion, I kept saying I was too busy to attend. I called her and said yes. Just yes. No conditions, no negotiations, no, let me check my calendar. Yes, one drawer cleaned, then another. Not because I suddenly loved organizing, but because I needed to touch my life with my hands, to physically sort through what mattered and what was just taking up space. I found cards I had never opened, gifts I had never used, letters I had never answered. Evidence of a life lived by someone else while I was busy planning to live. One chapter written. I had been talking about writing a book for 15 years, always waiting for the right idea, the right time, the right level of expertise. I sat down with a legal pad and wrote one chapter about wasting time, then another about postponed dreams, then another about the mathematics of regret. Momentum is mercy. Each small act was a handshake with life again, a treaty with the present moment, a choice to engage with now instead of waiting for later. Action became prayer, movement became meditation, doing became being. I learned that discipline isn't punishment. It's proof of love. When you do something now, when you choose action over delay, when you pick presence over postponement, you honor the version of yourself that once believed you could do anything. You keep faith with a child who dreamed before fear taught them to wait. The present moment stopped feeling heavy and started feeling sacred. Not perfect, sacred, not easy, sacred, not comfortable, sacred. Sacred in the way that last chances are sacred, final conversations are sacred, limited time is sacred. I started saying no to things that didn't matter and yes to things that scared me. I canceled subscriptions to magazines I never read and signed up for classes I had always wanted to take. I sold furniture that was impressive but uncomfortable and bought books that mattered more than appearances. Slowly, carefully, like someone learning to walk again after an accident, I began to inhabit my own life instead of managing it from a distance. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I imagine a field filled with tombstones. Not a real cemetery, those are for bodies. This is a graveyard for intentions, a memorial park for everything we meant to do but never did, everything we planned to say but never said, everything we intended to become but never became. The tombstones stretch out as far as I can see, each one carved with something someone somewhere postponed until it was too late. Here lies the song unsung, not just unrecorded, but unwritten, unhummed, never even whispered in the shower when no one was listening. Here lies the apology unsent, not because pride prevented it, but because there would always be time to say sorry later, when the words felt less awkward, when the wound felt less fresh, when courage felt more convenient. Here lies the dream unlived, not crushed by circumstances or killed by failure, but simply delayed to death, postponed into irrelevance, scheduled into extinction. Here lies the business never started, the book never written, the trip never taken. Here lies the conversation that could have saved a marriage, the phone call that could have prevented a suicide, the hug that could have healed a heart. Here lies I love you, unsaid, I'm sorry, unspoken, I forgive you, undelivered. Here lies every moment of courage that was scheduled for tomorrow. I walk through this imaginary graveyard to remind myself that every day I postpone something meaningful. A new stone is carved with my name on it. Every delay is a small death. Every postponement, a tiny funeral. Every later, a burial of possibility. The most heartbreaking tombstones are the smallest ones, the ones marked with simple daily kindnesses that seemed too minor to prioritize. The phone call to check on a friend, the thank you note to a teacher, the compliment to a stranger, the 5 minutes of attention to a child who just wanted to show you something. These aren't grand gestures or life-changing decisions. They're the small acts of love that make life worth living, the tiny connections that weave meaning into ordinary days. But when you're always rushing toward tomorrow, always busy preparing for later, even 5 minutes of presence feels like an impossible luxury. In my imaginary graveyard, there's a whole section dedicated to the words we never said to ourselves. I'm proud of you. You did your best. It's okay to rest. You matter. We postpone self-compassion like it's selfish, delay self-forgiveness like it's indulgent, schedule self-care like it's optional. But the cruelest tombstone in the entire graveyard is the one I carved for myself. Here lies Eli Rivers, who spent his whole life getting ready to live. The only way to escape that graveyard is to live so loudly today, so fully in this moment, so completely in the present tense that even tomorrow can hear you. The only way to honor all those buried intentions is to dig up the ones that still have breath in them and give them air. Every day you choose action over delay. You empty one grave in tomorrow's cemetery. Every time you say yes to now, you resurrect something that was dying from neglect. Every moment you choose presence over postponement, you rob death of another possibility. I don't want to add any more stones to that field. I don't want my epitaph to read, he meant well, or he had good intentions, or he was planning to live someday. I want it to say he showed up. He did the work. He said the words. He lived while he was alive. Now, when I wake up, I don't reach for my phone to check what happened while I was sleeping. I don't immediately start planning my day or reviewing my schedule or mentally preparing for all the things I need to accomplish. Instead, I whisper 3 words that resurrect me. Do it now. Not everything, just something. One step, one call, one truth. One moment of courage before fear has time to construct its elaborate arguments for delay. I make my bed because disorder breeds postponement, and I can't afford to start my day in chaos. I drink water before coffee because my body deserves immediate attention, not caffeinated promises. I write 3 pages before I do anything else, because dreams die quickest in the morning light unless you give them immediate CPR. The miracle isn't in finishing, it's in beginning while you still can. It's in starting before you feel ready, speaking before you find perfect words, moving before you have a complete plan. The miracle is in the first step, the first word, the first breath of courage. Because here's what I learned too late, and am telling you right now. One day tomorrow will come dressed as your final day. wearing the clothes of just another Tuesday or Wednesday or Saturday. It won't announce itself with fanfare or give you time to prepare. It will simply arrive, quietly and efficiently, and begin collecting all your postponed intentions like overdue bills. And on that day, you'll wish you had loved harder, risked sooner, lived louder. You'll wish you had said yes more often and maybe less frequently. You'll wish you had been braver with your heart and more generous with your time. You'll wish you had treated every ordinary moment like the gift it was instead of saving your attention for some imaginary special occasion that never arrived. I think about the version of myself who postponed that sunset painting when I was 12. I think about all the beauty he missed while waiting for better light, perfect conditions, more convenient timing. I think about how much life happens in the spaces between perfect moments, how much love lives in the ordinary. Tuesday afternoons we dismiss as unimportant. Today I carry paints with me, not everywhere, but often, because the light changes constantly and beauty doesn't wait for you to be ready. Because inspiration is a visitor that knocks once, quietly, and if you're too busy preparing to answer the door, it visits someone else who's home to their own life. I've learned that readiness is overrated and courage is underestimated. I've learned that perfect timing is a myth and imperfect action is a miracle. I've learned that the distance between intention and action is measured not in preparation, but in willingness. Willingness to be awkward, to be imperfect, to be human in real time instead of perfect in some imaginary future. So if you're listening, and I mean really listening, not just hearing words while planning your response, or checking your phone, or thinking about your next meeting, close your eyes for a moment. Think of one thing you've been saving for later. Feel its weight in your chest, its presence in your throat, its urgency in your heartbeat. Feel how it's been knocking on your consciousness, asking for attention, begging for action. Maybe it's a conversation you need to have, words that need saying before they go sour in your mouth. Maybe it's a risk you need to take, a door you need to walk through while it's still open. Maybe it's an apology, a thank you, and I love you that's been sitting in your heart like mail you forgot to send. Maybe it's something big, a career change, a move, a commitment. Maybe it's something small, a phone call, a letter, 5 minutes of meditation. Size doesn't matter. Urgency doesn't matter. What matters is that it matters to you, and you've been treating it like it can wait when maybe it can't. Feel its weight. Feel how it's been carrying you as much as you've been carrying it. Feel how it deserves better than your leftover time, your spare attention, your eventual consideration. And before this video ends, before you close this app and return to the comfortable lie that tomorrow is guaranteed, promise yourself, not me, not the algorithm, not anyone else who might be watching, promise yourself that you'll start it today, not finish it today, not perfect it today, not even do it well today. Just start it. Take one step, make one call, write one sentence, say one word. Because the distance between dreaming and doing is measured in moments like this one. When truth breaks through the noise and life offers you a choice, postpone again or finally begin. If this story reached even one corner of your heart, if it disturbed even one comfortable lie you've been telling yourself, if it woke up even one sleeping dream that's been waiting for permission to live, don't let the feeling fade. Don't bookmark this video to watch later. Don't save it to a playlist you'll never revisit. Don't tell yourself you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it when you have more time. Do something now, while the truth is still hot in your chest, while the urgency still pulses in your veins. Hit like so this message lives a little longer in an algorithm designed to bury uncomfortable truths under comfortable distractions. Subscribe if you want reminders that your life is happening now, not next week, not after vacation, not when things settle down. Subscribe as a commitment to yourself that you're done waiting for permission to engage with your own existence. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Your city, your country, your today. Not because I need to know, but because saying it out loud makes it real. Because naming your present moment is the first step toward claiming it. Write, I'm listening from your city, and I'm done postponing one specific thing. Make it real, make it public, make it impossible to ignore, because this isn't my story anymore. It's ours. It's the story of everyone who has ever said, I'll do it tomorrow, and woken up 10 years later wondering where their life went. It's the story of everyone who has ever chosen comfort over courage, later over now, someday over today. And the only thing standing between your dream and your memory, between your intention and your reality, between your heart and your life, is the sentence that once ruled my existence. The 5 words that stole 40 years from me. Say it with me, but say it different this time. Not I will do it tomorrow. That's the old language, the language of delay, the vocabulary of postponement. Say this instead. I am doing it today. Say it until you believe it. Say it until you mean it. Say it until you do it. Because tomorrow is not promised, but today is here. Today is yours. Today is all you have, and today is enough. Stop waiting. Start living. The time is now.